Jacob, you're old enough to remember a time when physical segregation. I'm 65 and you're just a few years older than me.
Yeah, when I was growing up, particularly there was a restaurant over on the far end of town, and just beside a section called Freedom, which was the black neighborhood of my city, and blacks could work there to cook, but they could not be served there or eat there, and that was so out there, so poignant to what we went through. And that's one thing I remember so vividly as I was growing up. And also, we had separate schools between the first grade and the fifth grade. I attended the John Chavis, they called it senior high school. Uh, Basically, it was first grade through 12th grade. And when we entered the sixth grade is when we quote unquote desegregated. But, it's just a little more about desegregation. Our segregation was that, there were nervousness, even if people invited you to go to certain places. I remember going one time to my cousin and I going to play basketball on the city courts, and we were getting ready to turn down the street to the park. And the only way I can describe the sensation was the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and we decided, the situation we were walking into was not good, and we turned around and went on back home. And just and also there was when I was growing up, there were situations where in my hometown there was a tradition uh, that there were a gang of guys, a group of guys, I won't call them a gang, who collected 1776 style muskets, and they were original when they refurbished them and on holidays, and they would go around shooting them off, but they would often stop in front of black neighborhoods and fire them off to upset, unnerve the residents, and just it's just this getting back to school. I felt like we started off behind because there was no kindergarten, and I was fortunate enough. My mom uh, bought us a set of encyclopedias, World Book encyclopedias, and dictionary, and we used to study and work on that in order to not be so behind. But it's just a general uneasiness when you were in mixed situations that you had to carry yourself a certain way. And one time I remember particularly, I don't know if you ever heard of Rose's department store,
Yes, of
or
course.
uh, I was in the Rose's department store when the Klan, Ku Klux Klan, had a parade on our in our town, and I got separated from my parents. And after the foray was over, people went about and got into the vehicles to go back to their homes, but there was really wasn't a hiding because you could tell by the vehicles the people were getting in who they were. And it's just some of those people were my neighbors and co-workers of my parents. And to say the least, that was unnerving. You try not to think about it on a daily basis about those circumstances, but they were real. Forgive me, my
Yep.
shaky voice, but this this podcast is like a
Yeah.
therapy
Yeah.
session.
Take a moment and I'll let you introduce yourself because uh, for people who don't know, I met you through St. Andrews. You're also a graduate of St. Andrews. It was Presbyterian College and St. Andrews University. So,
Sure, Jacob Houge, 1977 graduates of St. Andrews. I was a politics major who politics with a minor basically in business. And after graduation, I went into the business world. I started working at a trucking company, not just any trucking company, but the company that was the home base of the trucking company was based in our city. And, it was a pretty big deal because it was when I was growing up, it was in the top 5 or top 10 as far as size, largest trucking companies in the country. Getting into that field of work was really networking because the people, the children of the owners and managers of the company were the children. Their children were my classmates from the 6th grade on through high school. So it was really a networking.
again, networking still winning out today. So that was excellent. Now, backing up a little bit, because I wanted to talk about you were in the time period, grew up where segregation actually existed. And then there was a point where there was some integration, right? Do you remember about what that date was? Because I grew up in a really a better air neighborhood of Washington D.C. and I was in 4th grade, and there we found out there were new students coming into school, and most of the students in my before 4th grade were all Caucasian, and there were students coming in, and I'm wondering if that was probably around the time. I have to look up the date of yours, or it was a different time period.
A little different time period. My desegregation experience began in 1966 when I was going from the 5th grade to the 6th grade. There was a year when I was in the 5th grade that it was a voluntary situation, but my mom didn't want to put me into a situation that might have been dangerous. So we decided to wait the year.
Okay, so you waited a year. There's two things I want to footnote on it. Number one, you grew up in a small town. Your mom investing in a encyclopedia and dictionary. That's no little feat.
No, no, it wasn't because uh, we, well, we weren't rich. We weren't. middle class. My mom, at the time, she was between a maid and a nanny uh, in our uh, community, and she had to pay for those on over time. You know, $5, $10, whatever they were. I think they cost around a couple $100, which is a lot of money at that point for us. And
Well, that was thousands of dollars today. I mean, this is, in the 60s. I mean, just doing the projected math. So that was a lot of money just to buy for anyone, much less your mother to invest in it. And what a commitment she had to get those because she probably knew of what she could get. What's one thing that would help you guys for your whole life?
absolutely, the one thing about our family was there wasn't a question about whether we were planning to get a higher education after school. My mom, she was one of the first of her family to finish high school, and she was bound and determined that we were going to go to college. And from early on, we were what little money we got, allowances, gifts from family members or whatever, we would bank it in, piggy bank styles and put in. And after it got to a certain point, we would put them in savings accounts at local banks to save up for our expenses for college.
So you waited a year before you were part of this desegregation. Wait, and then what was that experience like? Because I mean, we both had experiences, but clearly quite different too.
The first year, you know, it was it went well, but we were all the black students were pulled out of classes at one point or another to be quote unquote tested to see if we were up to standards, you want to call it, and to evaluate whether we needed additional help in getting up to whatever level this the school system thought we should be at that, you know, at that level. And that was in the sixth grade. And then lo and behold, when we transitioned to seventh grade, which was junior high for us, they divided the students even more. There were quote unquote kids who were college prep or who were looking to go to do their education beyond high school at that point. And there was one special class called the accelerated class. And from my time in the sixth grade and from those, like you said, the evaluation tests, and I, I was, me and one other black student was placed into the accelerated class. And that created a buzz around our community because there was uh, the lady that my mom worked for uh, kept getting calls from her neighbors and acquaintances and says, you know, did did you hear about Lois's son. My mother's name was Lois, or his name is Lois, but she's still alive at 95. Uh, the lady thought something was wrong physically with me, but it was just people were shocked that me and the other student were in an accelerated class. I mean, we learned different things. Like we had many courses in French and German, and started into more advanced math that the other students at our same grade level weren't doing in junior high.
Let people realize the picture of this. Your mother's cleaning a house. The owner of the house is getting calls talking about you on the phone, and she's worried what's happened to my sons.
Pretty,
So
pretty much, yeah. That's what was going on, and so it's just a crazy feeling. Not what we felt like was normal. The family she worked for was a beautiful family, and they were friends. And she told them immediately of what was going on, and it was a pretty smooth transition of information.
well, I'm sure she was obviously very proud. And let people know you didn't grow up in a large town. And in this story, you're pretty much the minority in these classes, too.
Absolutely. Uh, I lived outside of town that when I was growing up, it was 4 or 5 thousand people, and I lived outside of that. And the in our, like I said, our social economic status was not uh, middle class or upper class or anything like that. And really, until we got exposure to uh, in desegregation, that we even thought or realized that, hey, y'all are poor. And we never missed a meal. We had everything that we needed. We had our clothes, we had our school clothes, we had our, you know, fancy clothes to go to church and all like that. So it wasn't anything that we even thought about. And another crazy point was it was at a time where in our neighborhood there was party line phones, and we did have a telephone, but it was shared with several other people in the neighborhood. All of them weren't uh, people of color, and we had to, you listen, you pick up the phone to make sure no one else was on it, and you called, and and you were attentive to whether when you were on the phone, whether or not someone picked up the phone, you had to let them know that the phone was in use. And seems way, way, way back. And what if you, it's a time also where you pay so much per minute for long distance calls. I mean, it's long distance are free now, but it could cost 25, 50 cents a minute to make a long distance call. So long distance calls were very short and to the point, and you didn't make them casual.
There's several points you made I think so important to showcase is something I've noticed in my own travels around the world is you weren't as aware of your level of poverty until someone called it out. And I think that's such an important piece of the community that was created. And also kind of that's the positive and the negative of our international communications because I met people in that I might consider very poor with incredibly great families, connections, and community, but not much more. And I think that's important note to mention is in my own experience of history in America, we had a lot of very tight families, especially African American families that were solid together. And even though they didn't have much, they were making the best of whatever was going on. And that's what I hear with yours.
We had a large extended family. In fact, the neighborhood I lived in, there were families, family all over, like within the quarter mile to a half mile, right, clustered in together. And I guess maybe you've heard it expressed before that you didn't do anything wrong because your family would get you and you get spanked and you get punished when you did it. And by the time you got home, you got uh, punished again. That's what kind of neighborhood it was. And, just what few white people that were in my neighborhood were, you know, the same way. There was quick, uh, uh, seemed like a telegraph. If this person did something wrong or that person did something wrong, it was communicated back to their parents very quickly. And I did have some childhood friends who were in the neighborhood that, it wasn't until the segregation that uh, that group grew because as as we grew up and went through school, junior high and high school, the people who were in that quote unquote accelerated class were continually found themselves in the same classes as we grew and matriculated to the higher grades and uh, and the kids expressed themselves as and talked about their classmates and to say the least, I was known uh, to the parents of my classmates and not in a negative way.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember because we've become so fractured now,
Yeah.
and how important the extended family was, even in my area in DC. I mean, if I did something, it would probably get back to my mother before I got home, and you didn't know how it traveled so fast. I do want to say it was really interesting because, for my experience, because I was in Washington middle class, so you were, yeah, it was a different thing. But when the new students came in and black students would come into my class, it was funny. I just remember in fourth grade in those pages, it was like, oh, we have new classmates. And I still wonder, Jacob, if the division wasn't taught into us because I don't know, I have an experience of more classmates than they did too. And then something outside might have worked on us to teach that there was something negative to that because I don't remember any experience of negative on either side during those time periods.
Yeah, well, my early classroom experiences with uh, our uh, white classmates was generally positive. Uh, uh, like I said, we were a small town and there were no riots or dissension. There were Klan rallies and things like that, but they didn't filter down so much into the children. Uh, but there were still instances where you could tell that this guy or that person was prejudiced toward you, and not to try to even be friendly with them. Uh, and there were particular students who thought they had uh, some kind of clout because they were, you know, other than black, uh, and and you had learned how to deal with those people. Either you stayed away from them or you walked with strength. And I tried to always walk with strength through those situations.
I love that word, walk with strength, because Jacob, I didn't, after fourth grade, I was told I'd have to repeat the fourth grade because my reading was slower. And my parents chose to put me in a private school, but at the time it was a very affordable private school. And at that, it was in DC in the YMCA, Woodward School for Boys, which I think is great stuff like that. But Woodward School for Boys mostly was African American kids in it, because that's where the DC middle class black community, they'd send their kids to Woodward School for Boys. So that was, to me, another gift I had. Of course, it's different when you're poor in the minority versus middle class in the minority. But I still view that as one of my richest experiences, because learning to interact with people different than you is such a gift. And it sounds like you got that so well, you then carried that on a decision ultimately to go to St. Andrews, because the St. Andrews was not a predominantly black school.
No, was it? My mother instilled in myself and my brother and my sister that we should, as we got our education, we needed to prepare ourselves for the majority and how to deal with the majority population. And that would prepare us to get out when we got out into the working world. And all three of my, well, all three of us, my sister went to University of North Carolina. My brother went to Western Carolina University, and and of course I went to St. Andrews. But not that we didn't have an opportunity to go to HBCUs. We chose not to. We felt like HBCUs have their place. They give a emotional and an academic support system for the students who go there. But we had worked so hard that we didn't feel like we needed the academic support because we're going to get the academics, and we go up to where we not just felt we could walk in whatever social situations that we faced, regardless of whether it was, you know, with our family or friends or church, or had to go into a social situation at school and in the wider community. We were prepared to deal with that. And just as a side note, you know, we were often picked up at or chastised for the way we spoke. And we didn't speak anything different. We just spoke plain English. And sometimes our peers in our family and neighbors says, you talk funny. And it's not funny, it's just correct how we're supposed to talk, you know.
Gosh, there's several things there. One, what did you say again? You walked with something. It was a great phrase you gave when you were younger.
Walk with an attitude that a that we weren't uh, gonna be you hold your head up
Yeah.
high, you weren't gonna be intimidated by the surrounding.
So that's really interesting because Jacob, I never really learned how to fight in or pre. I actually took a martial arts type training like in ninth or 10th or something, but before I didn't have any ways of fighting. So I learned if I walked with intention and assertively, then I got beat up less. And I kind of hear there might have been something there you intuitively picked up that by walking what you might call walking with pride or something might have had a nonverbal protective quality to it. That's just one note I want to know because when you brought it up, I saw a connection because I didn't think it through on my part. I just note if I walked like I was going somewhere with intention, there was less chance someone would mess with me because I really didn't know what to do if they did. And then the other thing is that when as you continued to educate there was some pushback from the community because you started sounding different because I guarantee this mother you're describing, I feel like I'm getting to know her in a wonderful way. She wanted you to be able to fit in with a larger majority of society. And what I've learned, Jacob, in the world is it's a social dynamic you were going up against. A group is kind of designed to keep a stasis. The good part is the group supports you in a certain stasis, and the bad part is it supports you in a certain stasis. So as you were getting more trained and educated, they're going, you're not fitting into the tribe here of group. And I think that's a human condition many people in different situations can hit on. And luckily, thanks to your mom's support and hopefully connections with your brother and sister, you went, okay, and I'm still going this way. The other thing was just there were some excellent black universities, like in DC, Howard University. We have here Shaw University. And I love what you said. It's not, they weren't great universities. You just chose a path. And it sounds like quite inspired by your mother. So, which path will give me the greatest access to move in the most opportunities? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's the whole that was the whole idea. Yeah. And it caused us to have to walk a tightrope because, we had our family, we had our community, our black community, and we had the majority community we walked in. And we had to keep a balance. We didn't had to make sure we weren't trying to be uppity or high tone. Uh, but we were working in the community where, we communicated, we interacted. Uh, from our economic situation, we were, as you said, definitely poor, but as we walked and carried ourselves through the community, we were invited and included in all phases of our community, our overall community. And one one wonderful thing that um, my mom used to talk about, you know, we weren't, she wasn't uh, identified as mother of the whole children. Was, let me get it straight, when she spoke to people, she was, although I said she was identified as mother of the whole children rather than the children. We weren't the children of lower soul. And that's how she was identified and throughout our school years.
That's extraordinary. Now, in our talking before, you mentioned that you decided on St. Andrews at a pretty young age. Talk
Well,
about that, because for those that don't know, St. Andrews at that time period when we went, both were I was in 83 and you were I graduated in 3 and you graduated in 70 77. So you,
yeah.
but that overlapped. It was a Presbyterian college. It was small. It wasn't real
Mhm.
big. It was in Laurinburg, North Carolina, and I think it's an interesting story of how you found out about it and even chose to go there.
Well, my mom at that time was a daycare teacher at the Presbyterian Church. And through my activities in our community, I mean, I played basketball in junior high and high school. I ran track in high school. I was in the band. The big part of our community was the marching uh, orchestra band. So I was involved. Well, both all my brother and my sister were too. Uh, and so he, the minister came to my mom and he said, I know uh, the admissions director uh, for St. Andrews, and do you mind me uh, talking to him about uh, Jacob? And that was, and when I spoke about my path going toward it, more going to a uh, school that would help me deal with the uh, the majority society, not exactly St. Andrews, but my credentials to go to school I built up over the years. I mean, I was, like I said, in the band, in the basketball. I was uh, presidents of math club, the science club, uh, co-chairman of community relation committee, and I want to come back and sort of hit on that a little bit later. But I was co-chairman of the Athletes for Christian Athletes, and I was secretary of the student council and National Honor Society. I built up a resume. My grade point average was, you know, over and above way over and above the minimum to be qualified to go into just about any university in the country. Matter of fact, one of my classmates, father, he was a recruiter for the U.S. U.S. Army, and he worked and processed an application for me to go to West Point and work with the community to where I got the senator for our state to get the recommendation. And one of my classmates was father knew this, the senator quite well and was involved in getting that recommendation. And the, the lady I spoke to you before about, I just said she was getting gossip about, did you hear what about Jacob's Norris's son?
Right.
She wrote recommendations for me to get in, and I was accepted. And when come down to making the final decision, I also got because of my test scores, I got a automatic half scholarship to Xavier University in Louisiana. So I pretty much had my choice to go where I wanted to go, and I chose St. Andrews because I pretty much turned down West Point because I didn't like the idea of the only way that a black man could go forward was to go to the military. And that was a look that I didn't want to carry forward, that there was other things and other ways to go forward and be successful in life. Once the school got my application, and he ended up the missions ended up sending me an application for the Vardell scholarship, and I got the gold Vardell scholarship. And between that and the BEOG grants for education that the country was offering at that time, I got pretty much well, not pretty much, exactly a free ride. I had saved up money all my youth to go to school, so I had change and I had money for books, but my tuition and board was paid for with the scholarships and the BEOG grants. So I was, thrilled to take that opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know that I would call it a free ride because I heard someone who worked their tail off to get the grades, the recommendations, and the letters. And then someone came forward and said, okay, you earned so much so far. We're going to give you a little extra help to get in the door.
Yep.
So you said you wanted to mention something about the time in high school. I don't want to step over that before we go on with St. Andrews.
Yeah. Community Relations Committee. That was a project that I got involved with, and one of my best friends from high school, she was a co-chairman of the committee, and our project was, I don't know if you ever heard of the Parson of the Hills ministries. It was where uh, communities uh, gathered together to get clothes and food and uh, supplies to go up into Kentucky. They did that at least one time a year. And Joyce, my co-chairman, and I were the spearhead of that action in our high school, and we coordinated with the community and the trucking company that I ended up. In fact, I worked for them when I was in high school. Also, they provided the truck and trailer to take this what we had collected. We collected shoes, clothing, and our group used the athletic facility to wash and, and then sorted all the clothes that we collected. And we had a group who were taking care of uh, sizing and shining the shoes and soliciting uh, goods from community leaders and vendors and stores in order to have to support the ministry. And in our high school, we all got into Greyhound buses and followed by the tractor trailer and loads of orange, because people in that area of the country back up into deep into Kentucky, they were getting scurvy, still suffering from scurvy because they didn't have, the proper food. And we contributed to that, and we went and delivered the goods personally. I mean, we went so far back up into the woods that we left the highway and we drove for miles and miles and miles uh, into the meeting place to deliver the contributions and gifts that our community had gathered.
What a great thing to be part of too. The people you were seeing firsthand in high school and working with that, it sound like they were much poorer than even your community had been. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So,
very much.
whenever you see that, doesn't it adds another richness to your character, don't you think?
Yes, I think so. It lets me know that they're not just that there are people who are not as well off as I am, but that there are people all over the world who needed help. And if I could be part of that, that was important to me.
I have a kind of a concept, Jacob, that when we make our lives just about ourselves, it ultimately gets more boring. you know? I see a lot of that in some of the social media spot. It's like these influencers, it's about me, it's about me, it's about me. Oh, by the way, I'm severely depressed. Well, of course, it's been all about you. I got a chance to do volunteer things in a number of ways. One was taking humor to cancer patients with a thing called a Laugh Mobile. And that was some of those volunteer moments. They really stick with you, don't they,
Yeah,
Jacob? Because it's like, I remember a woman was concerned because she had cancer in her mouth and her face looked like she was beat up. And I have this little humor cart, and I said, I just decided to say, she said, I'm kind of self-conscious behind it. I said, I don't have to come in with a little cart and humor stuff. She said, no, come on in. And I said, I took a chance and I said, well, what are you going to tell other people when you see them? And she sits up in the bed, Jacob, and she says, I'm going to tell them you ought to see the other guy that I beat up. So, but those moments, I'm sure you have all those little moments of meeting those people. And it's important that we get exposed to that. Now, my deepest exposure to poverty was when I went to Egypt with my mother. That was just took me almost a year to recover. So it's a blessing and a challenge, but it's good for the soul to be part of it, don't you think?
yeah, it is, and this, you know, causes your heart to, how do you say, uplift and that you make a difference in the world, that you didn't just leave it as you came upon it.
Transitioning back to St. Andrews, your experience there, you had some wonderful stories about that, and that ties us to something the what do you want to call it, the reunion of the Black Student Union, or we got a wonderful event coming up in October that I'm honored that I've been able to touch base on. And I think I told you when I was at St. Andrews, I knew of it, but I really wasn't that involved with it, but
Mhm.
I'm so honored that it was overlap my time period. So talk about being at St. Andrews, because now you're going to a university. Again, you're in the minority, okay, in a new world. And it's been proven that when we're in groups different than ours, it's always stressful. It's just a human thing. Whatever occurs, it's stressful. But also, if you can learn to operate in them, it's very powerful.
Exactly. And when I entered St. Andrews, I ended with an opportunity to be involved with the Black Student Union, but it wasn't just for supporting the students, although that was, an important part of it. But our goal also was to let the wider college know about our culture. And we did projects throughout the years that I was there. And the school uh, brought in groups of people who helped to let the students know that, hey, you're not everything. You are part of something else. I mean, we were part. I think the college was responsible for bringing in Gwendolyn Brooks. She came in before I got there, and Dick Gregory, the comedian, political activist, was brought in, and I got a chance to. He was a athletic. He always ran, and because I was around a part of the cross country team, uh, they need someone to, you know, interact with him, because the professors and teachers who started out uh, with the interaction before he did his speech got a little tired after a mile, and we continued on for 3 or 4 miles.
Oh, so you ran with him. I mean,
Yeah,
literally ran. Oh, wow. What a great story.
he shared some wonderful stories and insights that I'll never forget. And then other things that we brought in, we brought in a lady from Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia. She was a commissioner for the Fulton County. Emily Donnell. We brought her in for a Black History uh, Month speaker. Another person brought in after I graduated was Julian Bond from he's a state senator and activist here in Atlanta. Uh, we also brought in the Alvin Haley, the famous Alvin Haley dance troupe. We brought a troupe of them in, and it really wasn't cheap to do. We did projects to fund it. We went to the school and asked could we get have a discotheque uh, to raise money to fund bringing these people in, and it went well. Of course, all the students, St. Andrews students, got into the event free, but we gathered $1 here, $2 there, and we got enough to fund the trips for those people to come see us. And we also uh, able to finance bring a steel drum band
Wow.
that was based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We brought them in to perform, and we you spoke about being given karate classes. We sponsored a karate tournament at the school with people from all over the regions. One of our graduates was a black belt, and he sort of helped us organize the tournament. And I mean, uh,
That's so exciting because I've heard some of this uh, stories as well of going to the school. You learned how to reach out to the community again, a community, the Chamber of Commerce. When you went to them in the town, a lot of those people didn't look like you. So this group raised money to bring these things in again, going outside your comfort zone, and I think that's a beautiful part. And the other thing you had mentioned that I loved is how you felt the faculty of St. Andrews really, I think you said, just really worked, just saw everyone as students, not as different,
yeah,
and during your time, it had the accessibility stuff too. So we also had the gift of people in wheelchairs and other things.
yeah, the Willies that we call them.
Yeah,
And one of our uh, people in our group, when she remembers St. Andrews, that's what she remembers uh, most. How the the people, the wheelchair students, we were got to see them as just people, not as people who were crippled or anything like that. But it was very educational, very expanding, and the experience there. And one of the instruments that I feel proudest uh, that we brought in is that we weren't the first like choir, BSU choir, but our group was very active. We went to schools. We also were involved in uh, a gospel caravan that the community got together, and we had a concert every year for the to share with the community, the St. Andrews community, and we were so proud to be selected uh, my junior and my senior year to perform at our commencement. And it was, like I said, a very proud moments. And, for me, stepping on the campus freshman year and throughout the years was such a, a growing moment, a maturing moment, not just getting to know the outer community, but getting to know myself because the Black students weren't a monolith. They were different. They were from all over the country, from DC, from Charlotte, from Atlanta, out from North Carolina, also in Florida, just all over the country, Virginia. And we learned about each other and where we came from and how to deal with each other as we went about uh, our lives. And something I read recently from students from about 1972, they wrote a piece in the Lance paper how they were asked the question of, how is it to be at St. Andrews? And they brought out that it was like a balancing act. We came from not necessarily the richest backgrounds, but we were at a middle class college, and we were also part of uh, a Black community that wasn't, necessarily big, very rich, and that was we tried to interact with, or we felt like it was our duty to not to ignore uh, the community that we're in, and we tried to interact with them, but at the same time, we knew that uh, they viewed us very different because we was out there. They thought we were rich Black kids, and there were very few rich Black kids while I was there. Well, I can't think of a single one that would consider themselves rich, but the experience that we uh, received at St. Andrews was added tremendously to our wealth.
Yeah. That is something wonderful about that because since they didn't know your background, you could almost step into the next role of your life. There's like they didn't have enough history to put you in a box. In fact, sounds like they put you in a box different so you could uh, go and develop at the next level. And we met at a wonderful reunion of St. Andrews, which we now realize is the last one
Yeah,
officially. We'll have futures, and I was on the city on the alumni council, and I remember having conversations. We want more diversity because the school even now had more diversity. And that's where all this started to come together. And it was so exciting because I was asked to be the photographer and take pictures of the group there. And I thought, well, This would be delightful. And I got to meet so many of the wonderful students that overlapped and were in your time and before your time. And now it's evolving into we're creating something new, which is the a group, a nonprofit that's being brought into existence to honor St. Andrews and to move forward in helping other students. And we're working so that the kind of what I call the Black Student Unions reintegrated, almost like just a group. Like if you have any type of nonprofit organization, you're going to have other groups. And I feel so fortunate that I get to be part of that, and we're working out the details. And you were on a Zoom meeting at our first meeting, and we've got Larry McDaniel that was there as well, right?
Yes.
Larry. Daniel was there live representing it, and now we're working. How do we make this all congeal to represent all of the diversity of St. Andrews over the years?
Yeah, and one thing that I want to bring up is that before the alumni weekend this past April, we our group, our reintegrated group uh, of BSU, were working to help the students to offer mentorship to the students, and by Zoom, by personal appearance, to help them to be able to integrate into the larger society and be, a helping hand up for them. And of course, then the bottom dropped out on May, but we still have that goal as part of our dream is to reach out to students who have recently graduated and ones who have graduated 10 or 15 years. At this point, in 27, 2027, it'll be 50 years since SALF, but there's, a whole lot of students who come and gone and who can uh, get value from our experience and can share their experience with the younger students, the ones that just graduated. And we're trying to get our organization to grow to so it doesn't pass away with our older people. I mean, the base age is like between 65 and 75 of our group right now, and we don't want that. We want to strive. We don't want to pass away with the wind.
Yes. And in our last meeting, Larry was in person, that's part of your team, and you came in through Zoom. And I think we got a great team that's determined to carry the torch of the essence of St. Andrews and all the components. We've just brought on board to the committee someone who's was only able to go to St. Andrews because they had the wheelchair capability and resources as well. So this is an exciting moment of now it's up to us to carry that torch and move it forward. And I'll make sure to put some links below my discussion with Larry, so they'll have that. Just a great moment. I think you and I could talk for another few hours. I could talk about your military experience and everything else, but why don't we put that on hold for another discussion? This was delightful to reach out and thank you for doing it. What I want to say is someone ever sees, well, why aren't they asking me? Maybe it's your time to ask, because I think it was a mutual both sides going, why don't we have this? And people, it's the one that takes the initiative. Don't you agree? That says, hey, don't wait for them. Don't be upset they didn't ask you. Invite yourself, right?
Absolutely. And there's, like you said, we're not a monolith group. We're not all the same. We have different personalities, different experiences. I mean, we have doctors, and we have business owners, tech business owners, people who work internationally, uh, large numbers, educators, and people in business from all different fields that have come together and work. And really, our group came back together a few years ago. Uh, uh, I I'll say this out loud one time and hopefully not have to mention it again. I went through a loss and I felt like I needed to reconnect with the people who helped me grow and adjust and prepare me uh, for the world way back then. And so I connected, called the names that I kept up with through the years and gathered even more names using call apps and, you know, and people who had kept up with other people. And we reconnected this group that we got formed at this time. And we want to help this group grow and, you know, and we definitely want to be part of the St. Andrews Legacy Foundation. We want to be even an anchor, model for gathering other groups. And because I know there are other groups around the country that more regional. There's another group here in Atlanta, and I know, maybe uh, athlete athletic groups and equestrian groups and uh, music and just so many different groups who could come and be a part of the Legacy Foundation and help it to grow and help it to be a statement to the world about what St. Andrews was and what St. Andrews is.
Agree entirely. Yeah. And well, Jacob, thanks for all the work you're doing on it. You're such an active part of the team, and as someone who was on the last St. Andrews Alumni Council that was formal, uh, I, I I just second. We want to include as many of the St. Andrews people from the past as possible, and you're helping make it happen. Thanks so much. I'll put links below. This was a delightful journey that you let me be part of today. And I hope it inspires other people because I think people like yourself, Jacob, that really have focused, always find a way to give back. I hope it just it shows to me and shines to others the richness of what you got back from doing it and how when you needed help and reached out, I guarantee it wasn't because you didn't care about them at some point in your life, and they remembered it.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, it's only the beginning uh, with the BSU and with the Legacy Foundation. Both have goals and aspirations to go much, much further, and I know that they would both will succeed and grow together.
Great. Thanks again. This was delightful and look forward to many, many more conversations with you.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed it. And this, again, it was like a therapy session for me So
Oh, let's end with your mom's name.
Norris, Geneva Houge. She lives in Cherville, North Carolina, and she's 95 years young. Still active in church and the food pantry that our church works and provides to the larger multi-county community around our home area.
Excellent. Well, I hope to meet her someday. Wonderful chatting with you. Jacob, you have a great day, and I invite people, check the links below that are there, and remember to subscribe and the bell for future shows. This was just fantastic.